Isn't it strange that we live in a world where we can transmit high-definition images across continents in milliseconds, but still struggle to make eye contact with the person standing right next to us? That we've mapped galaxies millions of light years away, yet haven't quite figured out how to mend the invisible wounds we carry within our own hearts? Humanity has split atoms and encoded life in binary, but the science of the soul, the quiet ache of connection, healing, and purpose still remains one of our least understood frontiers. And in that strange contradiction, there's a question worth asking, not just about where we are, but who we are. What if the most advanced technology of the universe isn't our satellites, or our AI systems, or even the James Webb Telescope peering deep into cosmic nurseries? What if it's you? Not the you you've been taught to quantify, not your job title, your GPA, your tax bracket, but the version of you that pulses with empathy, that notices pain without words, that enters a room and, without doing anything at all, somehow begins to make it better. What if some people not wearing robes or glowing with some supernatural aura, but just in jeans and a t-shirt, listening to people on a subway or over coffee, are meant to do something different? Not to change the world with technology, but by tapping into something far subtler: human connection. Through the energy that binds us, shapes us, and heals us, even if we rarely acknowledge it exists. Now, if that sounds poetic, allow me to reassure you, it's not mysticism I'm speaking of. It's physics. Every atom you've ever borrowed from the universe vibrates with energy. And energy, as we know in physics, can't just disappear. It has to go somewhere. It gets transferred, changed, or transformed. Just like how heat moves from a hot cup of coffee to your cold hands, same principle, only less obvious. The universe is constantly passing energy around, like it's trying to get rid of all that extra heat from a giant cosmic thermos, which begs a deeper question: what role do you play in that transformation? In the study of black holes, for instance, we talk about the event horizon, the boundary beyond which nothing, not even light, can escape. But what about the opposite? What if you, in your own quiet way, are an entry point for light? A soft gravitational field drawing in pain, fear, confusion, and transmuting it into peace, clarity, and presence. That's not mythology. That's thermodynamics meeting consciousness. That's healing observed through the lens of cosmic responsibility. Throughout human history, healers have never looked the same. Some wore white coats, others wore feathers, some carried stethoscopes. Others simply carried silence and a gaze that said, "You're not alone." What unites them is not their tools, but their tuning. They are attuned not to frequency ranges our ears can hear, but to something more subtle, a biological Wi-Fi. You could say one tune not to channels, but to compassion. And the most fascinating part, many of these people don't even know they're healers, but their lives leave clues. Like astrophysical signatures we detect across deep space wobbling stars, revealing the presence of unseen planets. The healer leaves behind patterns. Patterns of connection, of relief, of sudden calm in a chaotic moment, of strangers saying, "I don't know why, but I feel like I can talk to you." These aren't coincidences. They're indicators, data points on the trajectory of a soul chosen not for superiority, but for service. A soul shaped to tune in when others check out, to feel deeply when others numb, to listen when noise fills the world. And yes, it may have come at a cost. Often, those chosen to be conduits of healing didn't have a gentle path themselves. Like carbon under pressure forming diamond, their nervous systems became refined not in comfort, but through resilience. They may be the ones who walked through chaos, not unscathed, but transformed, who came out not bitter, but strangely soft, strangely wise, able to feel the suffering of others, not as a burden, but as a signal. "I've been there, I get it, you're safe here." It's not a job title you put on a business card. It's something deeper. It's in our biology, in the way we connect. And yes, sometimes it's literally in the energy we give off. Modern science has begun to catch up to what ancient systems always suspected, that we are energetic beings embedded in a quantum field, that intention itself, when focused through emotion, alters matter. The observer effect, in quantum mechanics tells us that the very act of observing a particle changes its behavior. So tell me, what happens when a healer observes another human not as broken, but as whole? Not as diseased, but as becoming. That simple shift from judgment to compassion, from diagnosis to recognition, creates a ripple in reality. Like gravity bending space-time, the healer's presence bends possibility. They are not imposing change. They are invoking it by holding a higher energetic pattern for others to match, not by force, but by frequency. You see, if you've ever walked into a room and felt the tension before a single word was spoken, if you've ever touched someone's hand and felt a warmth that had nothing to do with body heat, if you've ever needed solitude, not because you dislike people, but because their emotions sometimes feel like hurricanes swirling in your chest, you might not be overly sensitive. You might be tuned to the fundamental harmonics of the human field. You might be, for lack of a better phrase, a frequency keeper, a healer, and maybe, just maybe, you've always known, not consciously, perhaps, not in words, but in that quiet ache to help, to listen, to understand. In that magnetic way, people seem to find you in elevators, at gas stations, in the checkout line, suddenly telling you about their life story, their heartbreak, their recovery. You might have wondered, why me? But the universe rarely chooses the loud. It chooses the ready, because being a healer doesn't mean being perfect. It means being willing to hold space when others collapse, willing to listen when silence is terrifying, willing to show up not with all the answers, but with the presence to say, I don't know either, but I'm here. And if your palms have ever buzzed with unexplained energy, if your dreams have taken you to places where light flows like rivers and hands emanate warmth, don't dismiss it as fantasy. Our ancestors didn't, nor do many neurologists today. The body holds mysteries we haven't fully mapped. Biophotons, literal particles of light, have been detected emitting from human cells. Your touch, your gaze, your presence, they're not abstract. They're fields, and fields affect fields. So what happens when you, as a human being, decide to become more intentional about how you interact with the world? What if you could harness the energy you give off and use it to affect those around you? Imagine you're a lighthouse, not the flashy kind, not the one that rescues every ship, but the one that stands steady in the storm. It's like gravity, doesn't chase things, it doesn't scream at the planets, it just is pulling everything together. Sometimes that's all people need, not someone to solve the problem, but someone to stay steady while the world is spinning out of control. And in an age where disconnection is a pandemic, where people search for meaning through screens, scrolls, and simulation, your grounded, compassionate human presence is revolutionary. You don't need to float or glow. You just need to stay. Stay conscious, stay open, stay kind. And yes, you will get tired because energy is real. And just like an electric circuit needs to be grounded, so too does a healer. You can't keep giving without recharging. Even the best conductors of electricity need a break. You must rest, recharge, reconnect not just to others, but to yourself and to the earth that holds you, because healing doesn't mean fixing. It means reminding, awakening, restoring coherence where there was once static. You see, we often think of healing as an act, a moment, a result, a cure. But healing in its true form isn't about fixing or doing something. It's about presence. It's like how gravity pulls objects into orbit, bringing them into balance. Healing doesn't force change. It creates the conditions for change to happen. It doesn't need to ask permission. Like gravity, it simply is. You might be standing in line at a grocery store, silent, scanning the barcodes of your own thoughts, and the stranger behind you exhales in relief without knowing why. Because even your stillness sends a signal. We call that signal many names: warmth, empathy, peace. But in physics, we might call it coherence, a stable wave pattern, a state in which systems, even chaotic ones, begin to synchronize. That's the secret behind a healer. They don't force change. They create an environment in which change becomes more probable. They are catalysts, not commanders. And in a universe where entropy disorder is the natural direction of things, that act alone is nothing short of miraculous. But let's be clear, this isn't magic. It's not some abstract fantasy. It's just physics in action thermodynamics, the science of energy transfer. And the amazing thing, we see this happening every day, even in the way we interact with each other. This is bioelectromagnetism in action. Your nervous system emits electromagnetic fields, measurable by sensitive instruments. Your heart produces a field that can be detected several feet away. And when you sit beside someone who is afraid, grieving, or hurting, your state of being, your coherence, can literally begin to regulate theirs. What was once scattered becomes still. What was incoherent begins to find rhythm again. That's not poetry, that's resonance. And we see this in astrophysics too. When two celestial bodies orbit one another over time, they begin to lock into what we call orbital resonance. Their gravitational poles interact in such a way that their motions fall into predictable harmony. Jupiter's moons, for instance, follow this precise dance, not because they decided to, but because physics demands balance. The same is true of humans. When you maintain your internal equilibrium, not as a mask, but as a practice, the chaotic orbits around you begin to settle. You become a moon, yes, but also a sun. And let's talk about energy for a moment, not in the vague sense, but in the real measurable way. Energy, in all forms, must go somewhere. It cannot vanish. It can only change shape. The emotional energy someone carries, grief, fear, joy, love, isn't theoretical. It's chemical. It's electrical. It moves through synapses, floods, cells, alters gene expression. When a healer enters a room, they're not absorbing energy like a sponge. Instead, they're transforming it. It's like how a star takes in hydrogen and turns it into light. It's energy conversion, not just collection. Because if you don't understand your own charge, your limits, your grounding, then yes, you will short circuit. But if you do understand your charge, you become not just a healer, but an alchemist of the emotional realm. Not turning lead into gold, but transforming pain into peace, chaos into clarity moment by moment. It's also worth pointing out that many healers resist that identity, and understandably so. In a world dominated by credentials, titles, and external metrics of value, it's easy to dismiss the invisible. What do I have to show for it, you might ask? I don't have a degree in healing. I just feel things. But the cosmos doesn't require your resume. It only requires your readiness. The Earth didn't check your credentials before pulling you into being. It simply responded to an ancient equation. When life needs restoration, it will produce those who carry restoration within them. So if you found yourself deeply impacted by others' pain, not in a codependent way, but in a cellular way, it may not be because you're fragile. It may be because you were built to register that frequency. Like the Hubble Space Telescope, floating above the atmosphere to see what the naked eye cannot. You are tuned to what lies just outside of the norm. And like Hubble, your calibration took time, pain, and adjustment. But now you see, and with that sight comes responsibility. Some call it a burden. I call it an honor. Because the universe doesn't assign random roles. It evolves systems that can correct imbalance. And in this chapter of human civilization, where anxiety is endemic and connection feels more virtual than real, your role is not a cliche. It's a necessary function of evolution. Yes, I said evolution. Not the Darwinian kind that rewards physical adaptation, but the conscious evolution of emotional intelligence. The healer is not the strongest or the fastest. They are the most present, the most attuned, the most aware. They don't dominate the environment, they harmonize with it. And in doing so, they make it more livable for everyone else. So, what are the signs that you've been chosen, not in a religious sense, but in a biological and cosmic one? You've likely felt different since you were young, sensitive to noise, overwhelmed in crowds, moved to tears by things others shrug off. You may have experienced strange sensations in your hands, tingling, heat, not as a symptom of disease, but as an overflow of current. When others are in pain, they seem to find you, whether you invite it or not. You leave conversations feeling like you've been through a storm because you've had dreams of healing, light, energy. You've walked into places and instantly known something was wrong without anyone saying a word. You crave solitude not out of antisocial tendencies, but because you need silence to reset your field. And perhaps most telling, people often tell you they feel better around you, lighter, calmer, more themselves. These aren't personality quirks, they are signatures. Gravitational imprints of a role you were built to play long before you understood it. A role humanity didn't just want, but needed. And it's okay if that realization feels heavy. It's okay if you're still figuring it out. The galaxy took billions of years to form stars. You are allowed time to calibrate your light. But make no mistake, your presence matters. In a world that craves spectacle, your quiet presence is a game changer. In a civilization that's constantly distracted, your ability to stay present, to listen without the need to talk, is a powerful force. You don't need to broadcast your impact. The universe is already keeping score. Every life you soften, every moment you ease, every tear you witness without judgment, it ripples through brains, through bodies, through generations. Like gravitational waves echoing through space-time after a supernova. Your compassion leaves a mark that no instrument has yet fully mapped, but that doesn't make it less real. If you could observe the energetic trail you leave behind as you move through space, much like a comet's tail stretching across a solar orbit, you'd see that your influence isn't limited to what you say or do or even consciously intend. It's in your presence, your field, your gravitational signature in the emotional cosmos of others. And just as a planet never asks for permission to have gravity, you don't need to try to be a healer. You just are. It's baked into your biology, not in the DNA sequence of eye color or height, but in your neurochemistry, your mirror neurons, your vagus nerve's capacity for co-regulation. The human body, after all, evolved in tribes, in proximity, in emotional resonance with others. And those who were most attuned to the suffering of the group, those who could detect the energetic disturbance before it became crisis, were vital, not just morally, but evolutionarily. Your sensitivity is not a weakness, it is adaptive intelligence. And yet, the modern world often punishes that sensitivity. It mislabels it. It calls it too emotional, too fragile, too much. But what if that too much is precisely the surplus required to restore what's been lost in this age of division and disconnection? What if your empathy isn't a bug in the system, but the update the system desperately needs? Imagine again the universe. At its core, it's not cold, it's not mechanical, it is relational. Every particle, every planet, every photon, all of them exist in dynamic tension with something else. Even the vacuum of space is not empty. It teems with quantum fluctuations, potential energy, fields we have only just begun to name. Nothing exists in isolation, and neither do you. So when someone says, why are you so affected by other people? The better question is, how can I not be? In a universe that thrives on interaction and energy exchange, your ability to feel deeply isn't a flaw. It's how the system works. It's like the universe saying, hey, you're not broken. You're just tuned into the frequency of everything around you. In fact, it's what allows us to understand each other and respond to the needs of the world around us. And the fact that it sometimes overwhelms you, that's not failure. That's simply a reminder to calibrate. Calibration. That's a word we use in science all the time. Before a telescope can yield accurate data, we must calibrate its sensors. Before a spectrometer can read the light from a distant star, we must account for interference. In the same way, you, the human healer, must constantly adjust. You must ground, recenter, not because you're broken, but because your instrument is exquisitely tuned. And when you are calibrated, when your nervous system is regulated, your energy balanced, your mind aligned, something extraordinary happens. You become a kind of cosmic translator. You begin to take the raw data of human suffering, the noise, the confusion, the fear, and translate it into understanding, into peace, into coherence. That, my friend, is healing. And it doesn't require a ceremony. It doesn't demand incense or chants or crystals, though those may be meaningful to some. What it requires is presence, attention, alignment, a quiet decision to be there, fully, without the armor of pretense or performance. And if you think that sounds simple, let me remind you, so is gravity, so is light. Simplicity doesn't mean insignificance, it means elegance. You might be wondering, but why me? Why would the universe select me for this role? And here, We must venture not into superstition, but into pattern recognition, a fundamental principle of science. The universe does not make arbitrary decisions. It creates systems, and systems evolve roles. You have been shaped, not randomly, but precisely by your experiences, your traumas, your recoveries, your longings. Like a river carving a canyon, your path has formed you into someone who can hold space, not despite what you've endured, but because of it. You weren't given the role of healer because you were unscathed. You were given it because you survived, and in surviving, you retained your softness. That's the real miracle. Black holes, we've discovered, can sometimes give birth to quasars, dazzling beacons of light visible across the fabric of space-time. Perhaps in a metaphorical sense, you are one such quasar, a soul who has known darkness deeply enough to now radiate a light others can navigate by. You don't need to understand all of this in technical terms. Just know this: when someone breaks down in your arms without knowing why, when someone tells you, "You saved me," even though all you did was listen, that's data. That's evidence. And as any good scientist will tell you, we follow the evidence. So follow it. Follow the clues that have shown up since childhood. The way animals seem to trust you. The way strangers confess things. The way you instinctively place your hand on someone's back at just the right time. The way your body seems to buzz with a quiet voltage when someone nearby is in distress. These aren't coincidences. They're confirmation. And yes, I know the burden it can feel like. There are days you wonder if it's all in your head. If maybe you're just sensitive, tired, or imagining things. That's okay. Healers are allowed to doubt. That, too, is part of the calibration, but doubt doesn't erase purpose. If anything, it refines it. Because healing isn't about having all the answers. It's about showing up, about being there when needed. It's like being a lighthouse in a stormy sea, not because you know the future, but because you understand the importance of being a steady point in the chaos. And in this age, where meaning is often replaced with media and depth with distraction, your lighthood matters more than ever. You weren't chosen to be perfect. You were chosen to be available, to hold a frequency of remembrance, to live in such a way that others, upon encountering you, begin to remember who they are. Not because you told them, but because you simply reflected it. You see, there's something profoundly humbling about recognizing that your impact can't always be measured in numbers or charts. That your greatest contribution to the cosmos may not be a discovery or a monument or even a legacy as history defines it, but rather 1,000 small, almost invisible shifts you caused in others. The way a photon alters an atom's state without ever being seen. The way gravity sculpts galaxies silently over billions of years. That is the subtlety of the healer's work. It is not loud. It does not demand headlines. It does not force itself into the spotlight. It is quiet, patient, relentless, like the expansion of the universe itself always happening, whether anyone is watching or not. And yet, the effects are unmistakable. You know them. You've seen them in the way someone's shoulders drop when you enter the room. In the sigh of relief that escapes them before they even realize they've been holding their breath. You've seen it in their eyes when they realize that, for once, they don't have to explain everything, that they are somehow already understood. Now, let's take this further. In physics, we talk about field theory, a way to understand how forces operate not through direct contact, but across space, gravity, magnetism, electromagnetism. All of them act through fields. There is no wire, no rope, no visible bridge, just an invisible influence that shapes the motion of things. In this way, a healer is a walking field, a human field, one whose presence adjusts the trajectory of people around them, not because of charisma, but because of coherence. You are the calibration point in a sea of distortion. You are the stable axis around which someone else's chaotic system might briefly find order. You don't do this with intention necessarily. You do it by maintaining your alignment with your own center, that quiet, unshakable axis that says, I've been through the storm and I still remember the stars. And that memory, that capacity to remember wholeness is what others feel when they're near you. They may not be able to name it, but they know it. Like light from a distant quasar, it reaches them and alters them. This, by the way, is not sentimentalism. It's simply applying the logic of the cosmos to the emotional architecture of our species. Every system from stars to cells seeks equilibrium. That's a fact. Entropy may increase, but systems still self-organize when given the right conditions. And you, healer, are one of those conditions. You are a catalyst for change, not by forcing things, but by existing in a way that creates balance and stability. Like how the laws of physics work, not by imposing order, but by creating the right conditions for it to emerge. And yet, and this must be said, healing is not always comfortable, neither for the healer nor for the one being healed. Sometimes healing means the truth coming to the surface. And the truth, like radiation, can burn before it heals. It can shatter illusions, break defenses, trigger grief long buried under decades of repression. So if you, as a healer, have ever wondered why people sometimes lash out, pull away, or ghost you after moments of deep connection, understand this. It's not always because you did something wrong. Sometimes it's because your presence made them feel something they weren't ready to process. Your frequency stirred the sediment of their suppressed emotion. And like disturbed cosmic dust-forming stars, that process is messy but necessary. You see, stars are not born in silence. They erupt from chaos. And neither is healing. So don't mistake discomfort for failure. In the lab of emotional transformation, turbulence is part of the equation. Sometimes the deepest healing looks, at first, like a breakdown, like regression. But what's actually happening is reconfiguration, deconstruction of an old neural architecture to make space for a new one. This is neuroplasticity. This is epigenetics. This is the brain, the body, the spirit, rewriting themselves in the presence of safety, resonance, and coherence. You, healer, are the field in which that rewrite becomes possible. But I must remind you, and I do this as both scientist and human, that no field can sustain its effect indefinitely without fuel. The sun burns because it fuses hydrogen into helium. You, too, require fuel. Not physical food alone, but emotional nourishment, spiritual grounding, intellectual stimulation, solitude, beauty, wonder. You must seek these things not as luxuries, but as necessities. Because just like stars can collapse into black holes when their fuel runs out, so too can the human soul collapse under the weight of unreciprocated giving. So rest, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Rest so your field remains strong. Rest so your presence remains healing. Rest so that when you do show up, and you do so not from depletion, but from overflow. Because we don't need burnt out healers, we need luminous ones. We need those who have not only survived their darkness, but who have also learned how to carry light without setting themselves on fire. And yes, your presence is needed, now more than ever. Not in grand gestures or global movements, but in the small, everyday acts of kindness that ripple through the universe, like the way a single star can light up the night sky. Because in the end, the universe is not only made of atoms, it is made of acts. Tiny decisions cascading through space-time, affecting systems we will never fully see. You are part of that cascade. You are not separate from the cosmos. You are an extension of its intelligence, its sensitivity, its drive toward balance. You are, quite literally, the universe becoming aware of itself and choosing to care. And that is what it means to be a healer. Let's take one final journey across the stars, not outward, but inward. Because if there's anything astronomy has taught us, it's that the farther we peer into space, the deeper we gaze into time. And the deeper we look into time, the more clearly we see our origin. And what is healing, if not the act of remembering the origin of wholeness? To be chosen as a healer is not a status. It is a surrender. It is the quiet yes, whispered into the current of human suffering. It is not marked by grandeur, but by gravity. The kind of gravity that doesn't pull attention but alignment. So if you've resonated with what you've heard, if your body leaned forward or your breath slowed down somewhere along this journey, then perhaps the signs aren't just abstract concepts. Perhaps they are coordinates. Markers pointing you to a truth you've long suspected, that you were not born to fit the mold of noise, but to remember the music beneath it. You see, in physics, When a system is flooded with chaos, the presence of even a single point of order can influence the entire field. That's you. You're not here to fix everyone. You're here to stay grounded, to maintain your balance in a chaotic world so others can find their own balance too. This is not performance. This is not identity. This is evolution consciousness folding back into itself, rising above instinct, transcending reaction, and choosing coherence. You do it every time you stay soft in a hard conversation, every time you listen without defending, every time you forgive without forgetting your boundaries, every time you walk away without hatred, every time you breathe, stay present and offer no solution, only stillness. That is healing, not because it changes the world in one loud instant, but because it changes the pattern, the frequency, the field, and the field is everything. So here, in this moment, not after more learning or earning or effort, you are enough. It's not because you're finished, it's because you're present. And that presence, that ability to truly engage, is rarer than any technological breakthrough. It's one of the most powerful forces in the universe because it's the presence that reminds us we are not separate from each other. Not in biology, not in physics, and certainly not in spirit. You're part of a vast network of life, like a link in the chain of existence. A frequency keeper might sound a little mystical, but really it's just about staying in tune with the energy around you, kind of like how your Wi-Fi stays in sync with your devices, and using that to keep the balance in check. You didn't choose this role to be special. You simply chose not to forget, and in remembering, you became the light that reminds others of their own. So shine, quietly, steadily, unapologetically, not for recognition, but because it is what the universe does through you. That's not a belief. That's astrophysics. That's humanity. That's you.